you know he's on top. Million subs, he never gonna flop. Out of Chicago, where the streets don't sleep. Betting on games, making cash real deep. Crystal ball for sports, he knows the lines. He's a sports aficionado, the money he finds. From football to basketball, he's always on point. Predicting winners never disappoints. He's got that hustle, that Chicago vibe. Making moves on the streets, cash on the side. With E, you know it's always a bet. He's the king of the game, never forget.
Hello and welcome to the Etoft21sports Show for August 13th. How is everyone doing? My name is Erik. I'm the man behind Etoft21sports. Absolutely loaded episode for you today. My boy Sterling from Silver Star Sports is this week's special guest. Him and I are going to give a betting preview of the AFC South. If I look tired, I've been playing with my nephews for 48 hours straight, so I apologize for that. But I'm here to talk some football with my boy Sterling. Really looking forward to that. Before we bring Sterling on, I would like to talk about the fantasy football spotlight. And the player that is in the fantasy football spotlight is no other than the person that has won me a lot of money my last 2 years in my fantasy football leagues, Mr. Evan Ingram. ADP of 65, tight end 8 per fantasy pros. He has finished as tight end 5 and tight end 2, averaging 203 fantasy points per season the last 2 years since joining the Jacksonville Jaguars. First year in the system, finished as tight end 5, scoring 176.9 fantasy points, having a target share of 17%, finishing with 73 receptions, 766 yards, and 4 TDs. Last year, he had 230.9 fantasy points, finishing as tight end 2 and an insane 24% target share, 114 receptions, 964 yards. Now he's entering his third year with Lawrence, and this offense is built to attack the middle of the field where Ingram will be running his routes. What am I missing here? The tight end that finished second last season, led his team in targets and reception, is going behind McBride, Kincaid, Pitts, and Bowers. In what world should this be happening? Evan Ingram is getting overlooked in drafts. He's getting drafted in the 5th round. He's going to be finishing as a top 4 tight end. That is why Evan Ingram is in the fantasy football spotlight, and that is why we are targeting Evan Ingram this year in fantasy football. Now, let's bring on this week's guest, my boy, coming all the way from Cashville, Sterling, a.k.a. Mr. Silver Star Sports. Sterling, how are you doing today, my man?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. We're getting closer and closer to the NFL season, college football season. It's a good time to be a sports fan right now.
So we haven't got a chance to talk. Thoughts on Tatum just being non-effective in the Olympics?
I mean, that style of play, the Olympics is definitely a different style of play as well. I still thought he would get some run, just even some minutes here and there. But if you're shooting 0 for 16 in jump shots, it's going to be hard to play over KD and Braun. But I still thought he was going to get some minutes at the end of the day, but that was Curtis's decision. What do you think of that?
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was really interesting. Hayden, Edwards are definitely the future. And for him not to get any run was a bold statement. And I just want to do a victory lap because I feel like right now, all the stuff I've been saying about Embiid the last 4 years with him looking the way he did, I feel like, hey, I see all these big guys at ESPN and Fox Sports 1 saying what I've been saying for 4 years now. Congratulations, guys. You guys finally caught up to me. Got a question in the chat room. What do you think of the JJ news? Will Darnold be able to get the ball to Jefferson?
Yeah, great question. It's sad for the JJ news. I was really disappointed to see that. He looked good in the first preseason game. Was really looking forward to seeing his development throughout the year. As far as Justin Jefferson goes and Sam Darnold, I think Justin Jefferson's a one-of-one receiver. He's my top wide receiver this year, like just in general in terms of being a wide receiver. So I think he's going to get his regardless. I don't think you have to worry about Sam Darnold if you draft Justin Jefferson in fantasy. But for their long-term prospects, I am interested to see how Sam Darnold performs under center.
as crazy as it sounds, I think this is better for Jefferson this year in terms of fantasy football. I think McCarthy's a game manager. For those who watched Sterling and I do our draft breakdown, we gave us scouting reports, we did a mock draft. I wasn't that high on him. I think he can't throw to the left side of the field. He doesn't take chances. Everything's just underneath. He's a game manager. Darnold, at least, is showing he'll take some shots when he doesn't see ghosts. So I think in terms of fantasy, it kind of helps Jefferson. Jefferson, I actually have as my number 3. Can you guess who I have behind him?
Amon-Ra St. Brown. Are you going that high? Or I know CeeDee Lamb's going to have a big.
I have him behind. Brown's one of the guys. St. Brown's one of the guys I have him behind.
And CeeDee Lamb the other?
Nope.
Tyreek Hill.
Nope.
Wow. Really? Jamar Chase going off this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jamar Chase is going off this year. Jamar Chase is going off. Guys, rankings are going to be updated. My goal is this Friday. Doing a lot of family stuff this week. And then I'm going to be releasing a draft plan every single week. I know I'm telling Sterling is in a guillotine league with me. So I don't know if I should really be talking my fantasy football strategy with him during the show. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the South and everything, what's going on there. Interesting conference. Let's go ahead. Let's start off with the Tennessee Titans. They're 150-1 to win the Super Bowl, 80-1 to win the AFC, 10-1 to win the South, make the playoffs. Yes, plus 475, no, minus 650, over, under 6.5. What say you about the Tennessee Titans?
So it's undeniable. I'm a Nashvilleian, as Eric alluded to earlier, but there's definitely a fresh feeling in Tennessee. You can just feel it. The new GM, new head coach, new defensive coordinator, just kind of injecting life into this new Titan team. Because I felt like for years it was kind of getting stale. They had their good runs in the early 2020s, but that regime's moving out. A new regime is coming in, and we're waving goodbye to kind of some of those cornerstones that we had previously. So no more Derrick Henry, no more Ryan Tannehill, no more Mike Vrabel. So I kind of look at this year as a transition year for the Titans. And if I'm a Titans fan, I'm not going to be super concerned about the win-loss column. I'm more concerned about the development of Will Levis and does this coaching staff figure it out. I said before, there's a new head coach, there's a new defensive coordinator. Also, Bill Callahan, the head coach, brought his dad, who's one of the best O-line coaches in the business. But he's got a tall task because Tennessee's O-line isn't that great. So can all of these factors come together along with a sophomore quarterback in Will Levis to get a good year in Tennessee? So I'm not necessarily concerned about the win-loss column. I want to see them develop over the year and put it all together towards the end of the year. That's kind of my initial take on the Titans. What about you?
Hey man, can you hear me, dude?
Yep, now I can.
All right, so I'm on site here. I'm away from my. So I'm on site here. No more Vrabel as a dog bet. I hate the Lakers. Talked about it. Look, that was one of my favorite angles betting. I'm frozen again, man. I'm frozen again. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to try to click over. All right. If I freeze one more time, I'm going to click over to my. Well, when you connect to your cell phone, whatever that's called. Offense, they will use the pass, the run. The offense won't be a deep ball offense, more short. But is Levis going to be able to do this? The one thing I've noticed about Levis, interesting your opinion, he likes to throw it deep. Is he going to be tamed enough to throw the? Can you hear me, my man?
Say, you were cutting out a little bit there, but I heard you talking about Will Levis and throwing the deep ball.
Is he going to be able to throw the ball deep?
I don't know. You look at that wide receiver core, DeAndre Hopkins, still a good receiver. I don't know if he's going to be beating people deep necessarily, but I think that's why they kind of brought in Calvin Ridley to have like another skill set for that. I know he left a lot of things on the table here at Jacksonville, but they definitely used him for some deep routes down the field there. So I think he'll have a decent connection with Will Levis there. My main question for Will Levis would be his accuracy concerns. Because when you think about accuracy, it's not just being able to throw a perfect dime to a wide receiver. Because you think about every NFL quarterback can throw the occasional dime. But can you do it consistently? And what I've noticed about Will Levis is he kind of has that little league pitcher mentality where he'll plate the corner of the strike zone one time, but then the next one's going to be a wild pitch. So I'm really looking to see if Will Levis can develop that deep ball.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is like they really don't go deep that much in this offense. You know what I mean? It's a lot of the underneath stuff. They got Ridley and Boyd to go with D-Hop. D-Hop's hurt. He's going to miss several weeks. They have talent, but is Levis going to be able to play in the system? Because we need to remember this is the same system that Cincinnati uses, and it took Burrow a little bit of time to get accounted to the system and be able to play in it. Offensive line, you mentioned it. The Browns, they drafted Latham, signed Cushenberry. If you remember, I'm a huge Cushenberry fan. So I think the right side of the line is going to be good. The left side of the line, a little bit worried about. Am I frozen again, man?
It's slowly. I'm slightly behind, so just carry on. I can hear you, though.
They added Pollard to go Spear. You just keep on talking about him. I'm going to jump on through my phone.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah. So carrying on about the Titans here as we're having some difficulties. But kind of the bets, I'll get into the betting portion of it. So Will Levis over 18.5 passing touchdowns is minus 112 on FanDuel. The reason why I'm going with that, he had 8 in 9 games played last year. And one of those games, he only threw 6 passing attempts. So he had 1 for every game that he played. He's got an unbelievably long leash because that's the Titans' sole focus this year is finding out if Will Levis is the guy. So he's going to be able to throw and throw consistently. So I think he can get 19 passing touchdowns when he's going to be the guy all year. They've surrounded him with multiple different weapons. So I think Will Levis over 18.5 passing touchdowns is pretty much a lock.
How am I sounding now? Am I any better?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I don't see it freezing.
Am I any better with the video? All right. They brought in Henry's gone. They brought in Pollard to go along with Spears. The question is, who is going to be the starter? Personally, I think it's Spears, but they're going to an outside zone blocking scheme instead of a wide zone blocking scheme. This means more stuff outside the tackles in. That really doesn't fit Pollard, but that's what Pollard likes to run. So I'm a little bit worried that we're going to see the same issue that we saw with Pollard down in Dallas here in Tennessee. With the offense, we need to remember that Callahan's never called plays. This is Taylor's offense. Taylor was the one calling plays in Cincinnati. How is it going to be with Callahan calling offense? Titans could have one of the best D-lines in the league. They have Simmons. They signed Joseph Day, drafted Sweat. This team is going to be very tough to run on. The issue is who's the pass rusher. DB's huge upgrade from last season. They got Snead. Owunze's coming in. Snead's going to be the lockdown corner. The best wide receiver on the opposing team. Snead's going to be shadowing. Defense is going to be better. Tons of questions on offense for me. Tons of questions on offense and who's going to be the pass rusher. I'm just going to step back. I am literally not doing anything with this team. You said what bet on Levis did you say you were doing, my friend?
Yeah, over 18.5 passing touchdowns was minus 112 on FanDuel right now. I think he can get that.
You think you can bring that home? Okay. All right. I like that one. I like that one.
Yeah, he had 8 in 9 games last year, so I think he's well on his way. He's got a long leash. He'll be able to do it.
Let's shift our attention over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 50-1 to win the Super Bowl, 25-1 to win the AFC South, plus 275 to make the playoffs. Yes, plus 130. No, minus 155. Over, under 8.5. What say you, my friend?
Yeah, the Jaguars are an interesting team. Obviously, how last season ended last year left kind of a sour taste on people's mouth. Trevor Lawrence had that big, massive payday that a lot of people didn't find him worth it. So a lot of people are looking at the Jags with questions, and especially as the Houston Texans have been were killing it last year. It seems like they've kind of been passed up and overlooked this year. So it's kind of a put up or shut up year for the Jags. So I'm kind of interested to see how Trevor Lawrence responds to all this. I'm kind of interested too in one of the areas that I think they can desperately improve is unlocking ETN. I feel like Doug Peterson hasn't been too creative in his run game coordination. So if they can dial up some interest there and get Etienne the ball, I think that's going to be very effective. And another area of concern I have for the Jaguars is their secondary. Outside of Tyson Campbell and Andre Sisco, if one of them goes down, that secondary is ultra thin. So I'm kind of concerned about that. But fortunately, they have an excellent pass rush and excellent linebackers ahead of them. But I am concerned about that secondary a little bit.
You mentioned Lawrence. I mean, I really think the big thing with him is what step will Lawrence make? He came in as this can't-miss prospect. He's been okay to start the season. If you watched the show last year, I had this graph. He has the same stats at one point last year than Mac Jones did. Him and Mac Jones were the same quarterback. Offense struggled last season, and as crazy as it sounds, I think that's because they missed Christian Kirk. The offense is designed to have two routes going deep, underneath stuff, hence the big year from Ingram. And then as soon as Kirk went down, they tried to play Ridley inside, and Ridley's just not a good inside as Christian Kirk. They had Thomas in the draft, gave us in free agency. They're going to be the outside field stretchers. As I mentioned in the fantasy football spotlight, Ingram's going to have a huge year. Shouldn't be forgotten. He is going to be the underneath spot with Kirk. Jags had the third highest target share in tight ends last season. Ingram led the Jags in target share last season, had a 28% target share. Would love to find some props on him, but for whatever reason, there's no Ingram props I can find. Another big issue with the Jags last season was O-line. I'm not sure they did enough to shore it up, even though last season PFF graded the Jags as the 31st best run blocking team. You ready for this? Etienne had a huge season. He finished as RB3 in fantasy football, and he had the fourth highest share of touches, So there's literally like no competition for him. It is all him in that backfield. Tank Bigsby did nothing. Travis Etienne is a gold mine with fantasy football. You hear all these people, CMC, Jonathan Taylor, what's another runner? Jahmyr Gibbs. Guys, Etienne, he's the only game in town. If you can get Etienne in the second or third round, you're sitting on a gold mine. Defense, you mentioned it, nightmare last season. They had an Armstrong from the Niners who fits the new system perfectly to go along with Allen and Walker. Walker's been a disappointment in my eyes since he's entered the league. Campbell, you mentioned the secondary, struggled last season. And I really think in terms of fantasy and props from a week-to-week season, that's what we need to look to target. Ingram props and Kirk in fantasy, that's the only two things that's kind of piqued my interest for season long in terms with the Jags this year.
Yeah, and I definitely agree about Ingram. I think he's poised for a big season. Also, too, he had 114 receptions last year, I want to say, and only 4 touchdowns. I think he's due for some positive touchdown regression this year, especially now that Calvin Ridley's out of the picture. I think he can be a pretty savvy tight end, especially on the later rounds, like you said.
Cool, Kev. What is up, my friend? Thank you for tuning in as my computer is freezing yet again, which I love it here in Michigan. Guys, I'm in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. So this isn't the Chicago internet connection. This is mid-Michigan, middle of nowhere internet connection. I'm here. I apologize. Next team we're going to the Colts. Colts 65-1 to win the Super Bowl, 35-1 to win the AFC, plus 310 to win the South, make the playoffs. Yes, plus 140, no, minus 175, over under 8.5. What say you, my friend?
Yeah, the Colts intrigue me for a reason. You see, they have a lot of continuity on their team. And last year, if you remember, they were a dropped pass away from making the playoffs. And with a lack of talent, with Gardner Minshew at QB, with Jonathan Taylor going down, a banged up team, and they were right there. And I think that speaks levels and volumes to how well of a job Shane Steichen did as a play caller and as a first-year head coach. And I think if you bring Anthony Richardson back, very polarizing prospect, we'll kind of talk about him more in a second, but I think you bring him back, he's going to give you a high floor in the ground game. And I think Jonathan Taylor being back healthy, I think this team has the potential to control a lot of games and be a kind of sleeper team that people aren't necessarily expecting. So I think when you're thinking about the AFC South, obviously you think about the Jags, you think about CJ Stroud and the Texans, but I think the Colts can be a sneaky 8-9 win team, possibly.
Cool Kev chimes in. Where is the fantasy gold receiver or team defense? Evan Ingram, baby. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne. A lot of fantasy production going to be from the guys in terms of the South. What say you?
Yeah, I think those are the guys to target. Those are the ones I'm targeting. I'm kind of staying away from Tennessee's skill players, as we mentioned before. I think that's going to be a running back by committee with Pollard and Spears. Spears might get the more touches by the end of the year. So, but yeah, I'm focused on the Jags receivers.
You mentioned the Colts. What will the offense look going into the season? The biggest question mark I have with them. They started the season with Richardson, who was a running quarterback. Obviously, he got hurt. Went with Minshew, who came in and became more of a pass-happy offense. But this is the move that I'm finding where I'm kind of questioning what it's going to look like. Instead of signing a mobile quarterback, which there's plenty of more mobile quarterbacks in the free agent market, they signed old man Joe Flacco. He can't be a mobile quarterback back there. Doesn't make sense to me. Richardson runs. He runs a lot. He basically played a game and a half last season, rushed 25 times. You cannot do that at this level of football. They run a lot of RPO. Usually pass out of up with Richardson and Taylor back there. This is going to open stuff up for the wide receiver crew. Pittman, I think he's going to see some regression. I'm totally out in Pittman this year. Minshew was a first read quarterback. Richardson is not. Plus, I think with Taylor back there, we're going to see them run the ball more. Offensive line in sync last season, one of the better ones in the league again. Getting everyone back. I really feel this means it's going to be a huge year for Taylor. We need to remember he's 25 years old. Look, I have the 9th pick in one of my drafts. We did this little lotto draft. I have the 9th pick. I think I'm going to be able to get Taylor in the 2nd round on the loop, and I'm absolutely thrilled I'm going to be able to get Taylor there. Cool Kev chimes in. Is Sam Darnold going to get the notion? Boom, boom, boom. And Jefferson for the – yeah, I mean, we talked about this earlier, my man. I really feel that it's better for Jefferson to have Sam Darnold back there. J.J. McCarthy can only throw to left side. Darnold is going to give Jefferson the ball. He's going to press it to him a little bit more.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, dude.
No,
Sorry,
good.
go
I'll pick up here. So kind of switching to the defensive side of the ball, I'm kind of interested to see. They took Latu, the defensive end out of UCLA, and he's actually one of my bets here. He's plus 430 for defensive rookie of the year, and Samson Ebukam was one of their big edge pickups. He actually got injured, and he's out for the year, so that's going to give Latu more chances to step up and be a top-tier edge rusher from day one. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity, and I think at plus 430, that's a really good value. But I am still concerned about this defense because in the Gus Bradley system, you think about how the league's going, you can't just sit in vanilla cover 3 defensive schemes and expect to be a very good defense. And I think it kind of caps their ceiling. So I think if they can get a bit more creative with their stunts and a bit more creative with what they do defensive side of the ball, it's going to help raise their floor and raise their ceiling overall. So I'm kind of interested to see if they do anything different this year instead of sticking with the normal cover 3 that they run a ton of last year.
You mentioned their defense. Are they going to be able to generate pressure? They dropped 7 last year, and they had the 5th most sacks in the league. So they're able to create pressure without blitzing. And I really you mentioned the kid Latte from UCLA. I think that's a great bet because he's going to be forced to draw pressure. And they have a sneaky good defensive line too. They have Stewart, who was one of the best defensive linemen in the league against the run last year when he was able to play. We need to remember he was suspended for a little bit. And then they have DeForest Buckner. You have those two eating spaces in the middle. If Latte is anything, he is going to eat, and that's a great value in terms of defensive player of the year because you're not going to have focus on him. You're going to be trying to stop Buckner and Stewart in the middle, Latte on the end. Should be able to get home. Their safeties are awful, and that's me being nice. They have some of the worst safeties. Why didn't they address that in free agency? Why didn't they address that in the draft? That's the stuff that doesn't make sense to me. I really feel they missed out in not going after that. So that's kind of where I am with the Colts. I'm all in on Taylor in terms of fantasy, but in terms of am out in Pittman, I was hoping to fade Pittman's receiving yard props, 1,500. That's if Richardson goes down, Flacco's going to target him. So that's my worry. I thought we are going to get close 1150, 1125 with him, a little bit high. I'm going to be fading Pittman in fantasy, looking to target Jonathan Taylor.
As a Jonathan Taylor believer this year, are you concerned about Anthony Richardson stealing the goal line touches, running it in for himself?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I'll tell you about the one right now. So the one that I am very interested on, where would that be? Actually, Richardson Taylor. Oh, he's a second favorite. I was hoping to get Taylor at a better price. He's 6-1 to have the most rushing yards. So I'm not going to get involved in that one. I got Bijan Robinson at like 30-1. He's probably 12-1 right now.
Really?
Okay. Dude, but like, actually, you know what? When you think about it, just kind of look at these. I'm looking at DraftKings right now. McCaffrey rained up, plus 275. And we have Taylor. We have Barkley, history of injuries. Kellen Moore offense, the running back really doesn't produce. Breece Hall, you have Aaron Rodgers there. Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball. We've seen this for a while. He audibles a lot. They're going to look in to throw the ball a little more. You have Derrick Henry, who's old, banged up, underperformed the last couple of years. Yes, I know he's going to Baltimore, but you have Lamar Jackson, who's going to poach a lot of those rushing yards. Kyron Williams, drafted Blake Corum, Bijan Robinson. Okay, he has value. I think Josh Jacobs, I think he's running behind a worse offensive line. Those that listened last week were on the under at H-in, 750 yards. Then we're at Pacheco, Montgomery, Nick Chubb, who's hurt. Like, Taylor's 6-1. When you kind of play it out in your head like that, it's really not that bad of a bet. Jonathan Taylor 6-1 to win the rushing title. I'll get invested in that. I would play around with that one. You may be able to find a better price at a different book. We're just looking at DraftKings right now. But yeah. Jonathan Taylor, 6-1. Next one. Houston Texans, my man. Well, anything more to add about the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. Another sneaky bet I got for them is Shane Steichen plus 1,400 on FanDuel to win Coach of the Year. I think if this team can get to the playoffs with a lack of expectations surrounding them in a loaded AFC, I think that can get him. And plus 1,400 seems like pretty decent odds to me.
Those are great ads, my man. Those are absolutely great ads. I like that one. So the bets for this are we're going to take Taylor to lead the league in rushing, and we're going to take Shane Steichen to be Coach of the Year. Lastly, we're going to shift our attention down south to the Houston Texans. Super Bowl, 16-1. AFC, plus 850. AFC South, plus 105. Make the playoffs, minus 190. No, plus 160. Over, under 9.5. No, I am not misreading those low numbers, people. Sterling, tell us what you think about the old Houston Texans.
Yeah, the Houston Texans are an interesting one. Obviously, they captured a lot of people's hearts and minds last year. CJ Stroud came in balling, which was an excellent call by you. I wish I had put more eggs in that basket, but I was still on the Bryce Young train, unfortunately. But CJ Stroud came out balling last year. Tank Dell looked absolutely amazing before he went down. Nico Collins is the truth. They add Stephon Diggs to that mix. D'Amico Ryans is pumped up on the sideline. I'm loving what the Texans are building right now. And also, Will Anderson had a good rookie season. So plenty of good things going on in Houston. But how can they keep that momentum going? Remember, we were talking about the Jags like this not too long ago. We were talking about the Jags like this 2 years ago when they made the playoffs. And then you see how the perception has shifted on them. So how do they keep this going? How do we prevent CJ Stroud from regressing? How do we prevent him from locking on to Stephon Diggs with a new superstar personality in there? So plenty of questions for the Texans. I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry as they just win the division. And it's but I do think this is a really talented team. And I do believe in CJ Stroud.
Okay. You mentioned it. There's all these quarterbacks that come in that first year that are supposed to be it. Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield, Derek Anderson. Remember Robert Griffin?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when you just kind of look back, and this is going to blow your mind, Derek Carr statistically had a better season than CJ Stroud. It just is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, Baker Mayfield threw for more touchdown passes. He had the only quarterback that had a higher percentage of off-target throws was Bryce Young. When you just kind of sit back and look at his stats, he's not really, you know what I mean? He didn't have as good a year as it came off of. Does that make sense?
Fair.
How is he going to act to feeding all those mouse? You know what I mean? You got Noah Brown, you got Dalton Schultz, you have Joe Mixon, you have Tank Dell, you have Nico Collins, and now you have Stephon Diggs, who you just brought in, who has a track record of bitching if he doesn't get the ball. Shanahan brought in the blocking scheme Slowick brought in the Shanahan blocking scheme. I think it's going to be better than it was last year because the O-line was so banged up. Green missed the whole year. He's back at left guard. Scruggs should make a second-year jump. Mixon is another year older and slowing down, but I think in the system, I think he's lined up to have a good year. They have Dameon Pierce, and the thing that blows my mind about Dameon Pierce is if you look at the advanced stats, broken tackles, yards after contact, he did pretty well statistically. You know what I mean? And then you have Cam Akers in the Hall of Fame game. He looked pretty good. Cool Kev, dude. I'm telling you. If Diggs goes to the Lions in 2026, I am going to lose it if he goes to the Lions. I don't know. I just kind of feel like every year there's this team that we kind of anoint. And I feel that's how everyone is with the Texans. And I kind of feel they're a couple years away before they can kind of get it.
Yeah, they were ahead of schedule for the rebuild. Like, no one thought the Texans would be in the playoffs at the start of last year. So I think they're ahead of schedule. And so we got to temper expectations just a little bit for them.
Here we go. Dylan Collins will lose. Yeah, they're going to lose touches. And when you kind of write everything down on paper, it kind of says to me that Diggs is going to be the number one wide receiver. But Stroud has a relationship with Dylan Collins. If Diggs is demanding 10 targets a game, I don't know. As much as everyone is excited, I think this has the possibility this could just completely blow up.
Yeah. I was taking a look at their I mean, yes, it's still a good team. Don't get me wrong. If you're a Texans fan listening to this, you should be excited for some reasons. But I think this does has a potential to blow up, like you were saying. So I think it's a sneaky team to take an under, like an all under 8.5 if things blow up.
Texans, Falcons, Super Bowl. Cool coverage. I bet the Falcons not to make the playoffs, and you are not going to like this Houston bet I have. Ryan likes to drop 7, create a natural pass rush. That's why the signing of Hunter makes sense. They're going to pair him with Will Anderson, who had a great season last year. The issue was they can't stop the run. They were 6th last year in rushing yards. We need to rewind. Last week of the season, Colts, were winning that game until JT went out. As soon as JT went out, Colts didn't do anything. If Jonathan Taylor stays in that game, the Colts with Gardner Minshew are beating the Texans. I think that running backs this year, I think in fantasy and week to week, these are props that we can look to target. Who's the second DB? Stingley's been great, but they have no second DB, no second cornerback. They brought in Oduka, but this is his 3rd team in 4 years. I don't think he's going to be the answer. So that means it needs to be rookie Lestier, who I'm not that high on. Look, this is another team I feel people are really high on, and you were hitting on it earlier. I bet them plus 170 not to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think the South is a 1 playoff team division. When you look at the West, when you look at the North, and heck, even the East. I mean, the AFC is absolutely loaded. And I think the Texans are going to be the odd team out. I'm going to play them plus 170 not to make the playoffs.
Yeah, my bet was a little bit different. I looked at Joe Mixon last year. I didn't see any juice left in him with the Bengals, so I don't anticipate him to have a pretty good year. And then for whatever reason, it seems like the staff is not buying into Dameon Pierce. So I think they're going to let CJ Stroud rip it. They see all the hype from last year. They've got new mouths to feed, so they're going to let him air it out. So I have plus 700 for CJ Stroud to have the most passing yards.
Ooh. And the defense sucks. That's good. Because one of the things when we do these bets is we need to think on the opposite side of it. If their defense can't get any stops, that's going to lead to their giving up more points. That's going to lead to them passing more.
Yep.
So that's a pretty good bet. I like that one. Cool, Kev. RB market is tough for fantasy. Not that many bell cows. I look at Etienne and Taylor. Those are two. If I have Travis Etienne and Jonathan Taylor. If I have Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara, I'm going to be doing backflips. If I have 2 of those 3 people as my starting quarterbacks, because we need to remember, we want to get ahead of the 8 ball, and we want to look forward when we do this game of betting in fantasy football. We don't want to look behind. Last year, the Texans came in with the Shanahan offense, the Shanahan blocking scheme, took the NFL world by storm, made the playoffs, won their division. This year, the New Orleans Saints hired the 49ers offensive coordinator. So, if you want to, bet a team like the Texans this year, the Saints are the way to go. We got them at plus 310 to make the playoffs. So,
okay.
So that's the thing. The Saints here, let me just talk about this. The Saints here got Clint Kubiak, who was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. They're installing the Shanahan blocking scheme. They hired Rick Dennison, who's probably the best offensive line coach in the history of the NFL. I think Kamara is going to put up great numbers. And I'm telling you guys, if you look at Derek Carr and CJ Stroud's numbers, Derek Carr had better stats. Derek Carr, I think from week 7 on or week 8 was the best quarterback statistically in the NFL. Saints are going to be good this year. Sterling, sorry, go ahead, my man.
No, I was just transitioning back to it. I was going to say, so based on all that we're talking about, what's your standings prediction for this AFC South we got here?
What's my standings prediction? I think, God, it pains me to say this. I mean, it pains me, man, because I hate Doug Peterson. But I got Jags at 9-8. I got the Colts at 8-9. I got the Texans at 8-9, and I got the Titans at 5-12.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I have the Texans with a tiebreaker over the Jags at 9-8, so they still win the division, but I am skeptical there. Colts at 8-9, and Titans at 6-11. But I do have one more sneaky bet here while we're still talking. So the Titans, if you look at their schedule, they open up with a pretty tough schedule. They open up with the Bears week 1. Bears fans are going to be on cloud 9. Caleb Williams' first game. Go to have the Jets next, the Packers, the Dolphins, got the Colts, the Bills, and then the Lions. I think they're a sneaky team to be the last winless team at plus, give me 1 second here. I think it was plus 800 I found them for. But, I mean, yeah, last winless team plus 800 for the Titans. And you look at all those different games, I think that's very, very doable that they don't have a win and then they figure it out down the stretch.
I like that. I like that. I'd like to thank everyone that was in the chat room. My boy, Cool Kev. Who else we got? Who else was in the chat room? Who else? My boy, Bobby. Matt Clay. Sports Facts. Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. Important to remember, we will be back next week with my boy Bo Kane, and we're going to be previewing the good old NFC East. Make sure you give my boy Sterling a follow. Sterling, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on social media, my friend?
Yep, reach out to me at silverstar_sports on Instagram. That's kind of my main platform, so just reach out to me there. Give me a follow. Lots of content coming up and lots of good stuff with the new seasons. So looking forward to it, and thanks for having me on. As always a great show.
Sterling, one of the sharpest guys out there. Look forward to having him on during the season. Make sure to give him a follow. And like I said, we'll be back next week, boys and girls.